Good evening. You're listening to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight is the young 20-something millennial Professor Pixel. Tonight's episode, Twin Peaks, Season 3, Episode 14. And I have to sit there and say, as a first watch going through each of these episodes, I wasn't fond of the last few, Pixel, but things really went up 2 levels here. It leveled up, to use the phrase the kids are all saying today, because this episode 14 was really, really good. It's got some artsy-fartsy stuff in there. It's got a little bit of the Twin Peaks stuff you want. And I really am starting to feel like what this whole season is supposed to be about. It started to click for me a little bit. We'll talk more about that and with some of these scenes here too. What's your initial take on this?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is the first one that really is starting to pull things together. And that's really going to be, well, explained whenever we start. So I guess the best way to talk about it is to go through. So we start after the lovely theme in Buckhorn once again. And we see Director Cole, and he calls Lucy in Twin Peaks. A quick conversation about vacation, but I don't think Cole really hears it before she pushes Cole through to Sheriff Truman. He learns that Harry is sick, and it's actually his brother Frank who's running the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Station right now. But he wishes him the best, and he asks what Frank has for him. Frank says that something has been found, something that he felt like he should know. Missing pages from Laura Palmer's diary have been found, and they indicate something about 2 Coopers, and that's really everything. Cole thanks him, saying that he can't comment on the information he just received, but he greatly appreciates it and gives him the best wishes before he hangs up. We quickly cut to Tammy and Albert as they're going over case number 1. A woman named Lois Duffy was to be arrested. And when 2 officers arrived on the scene, 2 agents, they heard a gunshot. There were 2 women inside. They found Lois Duffy wounded, and as they got down by her, she says, I'm like the blue rose." She dies right there, but then fades from existence. The other woman screaming, it was Lois Duffy. And Albert makes it clear she didn't have a twin sister. But the 2 officers that were there responsible for this first case, responsible for the Blue Rose, what was it called? Society? No, not Society. Blue Rose Task Force.
Yes.
They were Cole and Jeffries. And from there, for some reason, it says Palmer.
What's that?
I mixed up Tammy's name. Tammy says that the answer to Albert's question from there is, what is the significance to the Blue Rose? And she answers that it's not real. It's fabricated. That's when Cole quickly comes in and says, coffee time! And he's very excited about that. But really suddenly, there's a window cleaner. And he or she, whoever, is using a squeegee and just going against, and it's starting to hurt Cole's ear. But eventually it just stops. And after that, Diane comes in, and Cole tells her to make herself at home. She takes a smoke and says that she's reporting. That's when Cole asks about the last time Diane saw Cooper. And she isn't happy to answer his question if Major Garland Briggs was mentioned. But the answer is yes, he was. They explained they thought he died, but they recently found his body. and inside was a ring to Dougie from Janie E. And Diane recognizes that name. Janie E., the nickname for her half-sister, is married to a man named Douglas Jones, also called Dougie. But then she explains that they're estranged and she hates her, and that's when Tammy quickly drops a call for the Vegas office. There's this guy in the office that's excited to answer the phone for Director Cole. And quickly, he is told by Cole, I need you to start looking for a Dougie Jones, a Douglas Jones, and Janie E. But be careful, they're armed and dangerous, suspected for a murder case. And then hangs up the phone. And the guy in the Vegas office quickly says, we need to get looking for Douglas Jones. And that's when the person who told him about the call says, well, there's like 25 of them in the area. How are we going to find? And quickly, the director of the Vegas FBI office, the music rises up and says, how many times do I have to tell you this is what we do in the FBI?
That was funny.
Before we cut back, and this is the last thing before I take a break. Once Diane leaves, Cole gives the Twin Peaks info to Agent Preston and Albert and says he had another Monica Belushi dream. And we actually see it. It's in black and white. And he explains how Monica met him for a case. And Cooper was there, but he couldn't clearly see his face. And he and a couple of Monica's friends met, and they had coffee. They were having a good time. And she looks at him and says, we're like the dreamer who dreams and lives inside the dream. Cole says he understood. But then she leans in a little and asks, who is the dreamer? Cole felt uneasy at that, and she looked past him. Something was behind him, and he looked to see himself, younger, in Fire Walk With Me. We see the scene where Philip Jeffries comes in, points to Cooper, and says, who do you think that is there? And then the dream just kind of stops because he didn't remember that. It did happen, but he didn't remember it. And Albert looks at him and says, I'm starting to remember it as well. And that's where we'll cut.
Yeah, a lot going on here because, obviously we overlap a pair of scenes and discuss it too with our viewpoints, because this took about 15 minutes, these two big things all put together. But I liked it. It was very compact. There's a lot of stuff going on and nothing, I think, obviously too complicated to figure out. And it's more of a reductionist kind of scene too. Like just seeing Lucy for a moment, they're talking. She's absolutely perfect with what she does there, talking to the other Truman and basically saying, oh, it's the blinking one or what like that. And you can see the pain look they have in her face on how they have to put up with her. But it's perfect, Lucy, and it's a great example. And it makes us just feel like there's Twin Peaks. Another thing here too, when you're talking about what's going on next with Gordon Cole and, Preston and everybody trying to figure stuff what's going on. We know that they suspect Diane is involved in something, but the key piece to me in this whole going back and forth is not what's the significance of the Blue Rose and thinking of it as a task force. It's the fact that there's acknowledgement in this group's part here of the tulpa, which is a doppelganger, your evil half, your other half, whatever you want to refer to it. And we saw that with Bob and Mike, the two spirits. We saw that actually in a lot of relationships in season 1 and season 2, where you take somebody like Audrey, usually it's the bad girl who hates the nice guy, but here the bad girl likes the nice guy in Agent Cooper. And that was a way to kind of flip things on their just flip them around a little bit. And I thought that was something we're attracted to. And so we have this idea of this tulpa, and it's like, okay, that makes sense with the cream corn nonsense that we saw in season 2, with my orchid grower and Harold. And that makes sense that that's the essence, because we saw some of that earlier in here in season 3 with Doppelganger. So obviously Tammy's getting up to speed, and Albert's there just giving her info. When Diane showed up and she's like, agent reporting for duty, you can tell she's kind of pissy, but there's going to be, based off what she says, a huge reveal going on. And that's the fact that with the ring that was found in his stomach, that she's saying like, hey, my sister is named Janie, but she's my half sister, and she's married to a guy named Dougie. So all of a sudden we have 3 Dougies, or three Dales. We've got Dougie Dale, we've got Double Dale, we've got Good Dale. We know that. We know that there's been a flip of the two. If you're a viewer watching up to this point, they don't know it. So we're realizing that they're coming to the possibility that this can exist. And of course, having the ring inside you was never been a good thing, no matter what the significance is. So you want to be careful of taking the ring. So we know that we're getting closer to everybody meeting. Yes, when the Vegas field office gets the call, the guy overdoes it and he loses it. I thought that was funny for whatever reason. I thought it was pretty interesting. But the thing that interested me in the scene is when we talk about things on the Xtreme Movie Show, which is where we base our TV analysis. It's basically an 80s based show, right? So we cover a lot of action films and just canon classics, and we'll cover anything, old, new, whatever. But one theme that came up a lot that we haven't talked about a lot is a lot on 80s TV, but especially in movies. Whenever you saw like FBI agents or hardcore detectives in their offices, you usually would have, and this has continued through the 90s, although it's certainly not as apparent, you would see a picture of whoever the current president was. So you saw Reagan's picture, a specific one on the background in everybody's office like crazy. Then you would see Clinton's and so on. And then here I'm looking at the FBI guy, and he's going off in his, weakling underling, the guy that looks like a real wuss. And I'm going, is that Eisenhower in the back? Because I'm like, is that like where Lynch is like popping himself by saying, well, I'm going to put in there the guy from the 50s or whatever. I'm like, okay, there's little details like that I try to look for whenever we watch a scene, because early on we talked all about the red balloons in Vegas. Don't know what the hell they mean, but they're a theme. And part of the whole Lynchian experience is these visual cues that we just go, well, sometimes they have meaning. Maybe we ascribe meaning to them because he leaves them in there and allows us to imprint what we want on them. I'm not trying to sound too big here about it, but I think that's really important, because actually, while it's extraneous, I like the dream sequence with Monica in it. I think his line is perfect, which said she was very pleasant to me, and we all shared, we all had a coffee and tells him a dream, because she don't need this stuff, but we know that Dale revolves a lot around his exploits with his dreams, his subconscious brain, as it were, with the rock throwing, that really made us go, okay, if Twin Peaks isn't too weird, it's getting weird because of that in season 1, right? So it was kind of nice that they did it. It was a nice little touch. I'm glad she was actually there. And I don't know if, I guess they're friends and they know each other or something, but it was just nice. And she's obviously not, a 19-year-old runway model, but she's a very elegant looking lady. So it was nice to see a kind of a classy exchange here too. And then a little bit of David Bowie in black and white from Fire Walk with Me really helps bring it home. I enjoy this whole big opening bit too. But I'll tell you what else I enjoyed, Pixel, and that's when we get to Twin Peaks here for a split second, because we got Bobby, we got Deputy Dumbass, and we got Hawk, and they're setting up coffee and some stuff, and they've got sandwiches from the Double R. And then our little bastard guy that we don't like, Chad, that we know is a bad dude, comes in, and they all arrest him at gunpoint to throw him in a cell. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see him go into jail, because we haven't seen the jail too much, except for back in episode 1 when Bobby was put in there, right, with Mike.
Yeah.
So we get to revisit of it, and I want to talk more later with the last episodes if I think what's going to happen is going to happen. And where we digressed about season 3, I think this whole opening bit kind of summarizes this. I don't think Lynch and I don't think Frost wanted to do Twin Peaks. I don't think they wanted to do a nostalgia kick. And I'm really thankful that they haven't. I'm glad, because with Lucy's little 10-second phone call scene, that's all you need. we're getting a totally different story with only smattering of the characters. And I mentioned before, I called it the less is more approach. I think it really works. That being said, we get more of these Twin Peaks character in this episode than we have in a lot of the other ones, because we cut to where the team that just arrested Chad are going out into the woods. And this, my God, feels like the best parts of season 2 and stuff. We hear some of the electrical humming, but they're pulling off to the side of the roads in the woods, and that they're all got backpacks on for hiking, and they're dressed in their gear. And they spend a few minutes going deeper into the brush, and
with dirt
Bobby's
in their
reminiscing.
pockets.
That's true, because they had, well, when they get to a certain point, the Jackrabbit Palace is when they put dirt in their pockets and move on. But Bobby's reminiscing about this is where his father, Major Briggs, used to take him and could only tell him so much stuff, but they tell stories. And it's a nice little scene for Bobby here, too. It's not too talky, because they're getting absorbed into what's going on in the wilderness. And the Jackrabbit's Palace is just basically a felled tree stump, a very large one, maybe 20 feet tall. And they talk about it, but while they're all there, we get something that happens that we would not expect to happen. And again, I think that's a blessing, because as they move on a little bit deeper, they go around the corner of another tree, and they see, looks like lightning flashes of white strobing effect, and looks like a little small fall cloud, maybe a 10 by 10 area or whatever. And there's like a little pool of white liquid that looks probably familiar to us. But as they're there, this is where it just fucking gets awesome. There's a naked woman laying on her side away from us. And they of course, they don't, she's got a really nice figure. She's petite, she's compact. Andy walks up to her, rolls her over. And the reason why we saw the shot of her back and her nude backside, and we see her nude front side, is because it's the lady from one of the earlier episodes that helped Cooper in that red room, whatever situation on that Red Sea, who had her eyes look like they were gouged out and sewed shut. And it's her, and she's in pain. And then things just get batshit crazy, because while they're all sitting there watching going on, one of them says, "Hey, it's 2:53." For the second time at least, and you commented on it when it first happened in the previous episode, we get the vortex effect above it. And what's really weird about this is not that it happens, or we get this lady that's now a physical, tangible presence in what we would call our real world, rather than a dream state or an in-between place, or whatever we would call that area she was in, which we've never seen. We see the guy that appears to be the giant, the tall man, who calls himself the fireman now, in a special room with who? Deputy Dumbass. And this scene, again, these scenes are extended. They're not the quick back and forth stuff that we got a lot in some episodes. This is where the episodes really shine, because we're going, wow, Deputy Dumbass is getting a really, really big moment, because you would never expect to see him in this here too. And so there's like a snap of his fingers, and in Deputy's hands, he gets like this little vessel. For me, I almost thought of it as like a censer, which is the thing that back in the old days, it was like on a chain, and you would swing and it would have smoke. But this is a handheld looking smoke type device, and some smoke comes out of it, and it just kind of forms above Andy, and he looks up in it, and we get shots of what I thought was great, but we had no idea what the hell it meant. From a few episodes back, the whole 50s thing with the guys with the cold looking face, the smokers that killed everybody, and that really disturbing black and white nuclear war type sequence. Yeah. And this just goes on, and you see some scenes. You see like one of the earliest scenes of like Laura running into the high school, or somebody, whoever it was, back in, I think, episode 1, maybe back, or no, it was whoever it was. It's when Laura died, and they all found out early on. You skip the red room. Yeah, well, it's a person from behind. Maybe it's Dawn. I don't recall if that's specifically what it's supposed to be, but pictures of Laura. We get the telephone pole that we saw a while ago. We see him moving Lucy into an area for a bit, and of course we see just these random images before it kind of like the smoke reverses, goes back in the pot, and it doesn't say anything, but you see all the guys kind of walk around outside before Andy comes back, and it's like he's got special knowledge. He says, "We need to get her down to the end of the mountain. She's very important, and there's a lot of people that want her dead. So we got to get her locked up, and nobody but us can know." And it's just a total change of what we're used to from him. I mentioned before, there's scene where he was going to meet somebody and he got stood up, and it had to do with the whole subplot, I think, with Chad and somebody else with bad stuff, and we'll see how that gets resolved. But it's dark, it's gritty, it's gutty. Truman basically says, "Hey, what happened to us to Hawk?" And Hawk's like, "I don't know, but something did, and it was powerful, but I don't remember it." And they're like, "Yeah, same with me." So somehow W. Andy's got this woman that we've kind of honestly forgotten about. And I'll pause there because it's a lot, even though they kind of continue with it back at the station. But I'll stop right there and let you catch up.
Yeah, no, that whole scene was great. There's one key piece of information that we need to remember, and that is that the giant is the fireman. Yes. But overall, yeah, I really did love this scene. But getting to the station, it just doesn't stop getting weird because we go there and the woman is now in Lucy's pajamas. She's explaining how, well, I had these, blah, blah, blah. And Chad is screaming how they're idiots. They're all idiots. You're a bad cop. And there's this flash of this guy that's almost like a zombie with blood just pouring out of his mouth and nose. And he says, "You're a bad cop." And he's just repeating random things as they go on. And the poor blind woman is just chattering. That's the sound that the subtitle said, chattering. And the zombie guy starts trying to do it back, and it almost seems like he's doing it differently in such a way that it's not just copy, that maybe it's a little something, a little conversation. But
it's like
at the end of
chirping together.
Yes, but Chad is utterly annoyed, covers his ears with the pillow as the zombie guy just bleeds more and more. And that's a really quick scene.
But before you move on, I want to tell you something a stupid thought I had. Obviously, I'm wrong about it. But when I saw her get rolled over for a second before I saw her eyes, because this woman looks Asian, she's got very dark hair, petite, compact, fit-looking body. I immediately went and thought, oh my God, some of the things that we forget that we didn't really like. But Josie Packard died and her spirit went into like a doorknob. Remember at the Great Northern? And I thought, oh my God, are they bringing her back? Really? And I thought, no, it's not. It's the woman, because I had totally blanked out on the whole, mystical sea scene that Dale went through and all that too, that she kind of helped him escape from, early on. And we still don't know the significance, but she's tangible now, right? So, yeah, there was a brief moment of panic as I thought Josie might be back.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm still not convinced that woman with the eyes gouged out isn't Josie, but
well, I don't want it to be, but I just, because they do, it's a similar look.
And until a name is given, I'm not convinced. But at the Great Northern Lodge, and somewhere near it at least, we see two guys. One with a green glove and his hand picking up nuts and just cracks them instantly. And his friend Jimmy, but it's actually James Hurley. We know.
Hey, more James. Yeah.
Hey, at least he's not singing. It's him and his friend Freddie, and they have one more delivery for the night.
Freddie got fingered. Sorry.
And then it's off to the roadhouse for them. And there's a little talk about how the girl that James likes is married right now, and I know. And then they talk about the glove. And Freddie explains he can't take it off. A doc tried once, but I just started bleeding. And Freddie has a story of how he got the glove, but he's reluctant to tell it. But eventually, with James saying, "Oh well, it's my birthday. You got to tell me this story." And Freddie decides that he told the doctor so he could tell him. 6 months ago, after a night at the pub with the boys, he was walking home, and he was feeling weird down an alley shortcut he usually takes. and he felt lost. Like he should be helping people, but he's just there doing nothing. And he saw a pile of boxes. So he decided to jump into them. But as he did, up above, he was sucked into this tunnel of air into a void. And in it, there was a man who said, "I am the fireman," and told him to go to a hardware store, find an open package of gloves. There should be one right glove in there, and buy that package, and it'll give him the power of a pile driver. So he explains that he woke up and he was shaken by it, but he did go to the corner, went in the hardware store, found that glove, and went to the counter. He starts going on about a certain name they would give him, but I didn't write it down because it was just too ridiculous at that point. But the guy would not sell him that package. So eventually, Freddy just put the money for the glove down and bolted. As he was running, he put it on, and the guy behind the counter hopped over and was starting to chase him. Eventually, Freddy turned around and he punched the guy, but it seemed to bend his neck, and I think that's the best way to put it. And it seems it did actually give him the strength that he was promised. But there's one more thing the fireman told him: to go to Twin Peaks. There he'll find his destiny. And James asks, okay, but why you? And Freddy says he asked the same thing, and the fireman said, why not you? And there was one more piece of information. When he went to go get a plane ticket, there was one already waiting for him to go. And so he went there and hasn't looked back. After this, James goes to check the furnaces, and there's this strange pan to a door. It's really a weird scene to just throw in there. I don't feel anything on, but at the same time, with how they shot it, you're supposed to.
Going back just real quick, I made the comment about how it almost seemed like could have been Josie Packard for a minute. I will say one little thing I put down was that whenever Andy does these alpha male kind of things, to use words, you can see she's got the big eyes and she's just like gushing and getting all wet and everything too, watching her man walk by, because he doesn't cuss, he doesn't do anything. He's just like, you're a really, really bad person, Chad. You give good cops a bad, and it's just like funny because they are the couple, right? So, I mean, it makes sense that happens. But yeah, moving on. I have that love-hate with James, but I don't want to think about James, but it's like that flounder from Animal House reaction where all of a sudden you just start throwing stuff at the screen, kind of like Andy. But this, I don't know why this scene is in here. I don't know why it needs to be. The thumb forefinger that he's smashing the walnuts in, and James is trying to help him show how to do it for real to get so he can actually get the meat out of it. It's a stupid story. It's dumb. It's goofy in its own way. I think Hurley's really good in here because honestly, he's was slaying all the ladies in seasons 1 and 2, and in here he's not really gotten the job done or whatever. So I don't know what his situation is, and I mean, we know who he is, or at least what he was at this point. So he's one of the few characters we're going, well, we kind of really don't know what's happened to him. He's just showed up. He's singing. He sang a song. He got the married woman really hot for him and all that too, smoking hot babe. So my initial thoughts is he's going to sleep with her. Something's going to happen. And if that's it with James, well, then we get James. But with a lot of the characters, I just mentioned this earlier, and we touched on a few other episodes, we're getting a bit of the flip side of the coin with some of these characters, specifically Audrey, right? And her situation. So Freddy does a great job telling the story. The only thing it reminds me of, because my mythology is extremely rusty, but Michael Moorcock, a British writer, Errol Melvin by name, which The Witcher is based off, he wrote another series Quorum and Hawkmoon, and basically his existential thing was all these guys lived on different planets, but they were all the same being. And one of the guys had gotten tortured and his hand cut off, and they put like this alien hand on him too. And I always think of that because it had like special strength and stuff too. And when reading it as a kid, I was like, oh, this is a badass concept. You know, it's different than like Conan Sword and Sorcery. So there's a significance to it. Maybe there's a significance to the being green. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it. But Freddy is from Britain, you know, London, East End, West End, or whatever he said. But whoever this actor is, I don't know him. He's not a big guy, but he was convincing in it. So this I thought was a really, really good scene. And the thing to it is as they go through James, we get to see him as not really being a jerk. He listens. He seems older, mature. We always know that he's got that, you know, sensitive side to him, whatever, but he's not really a puss. You know, we just get annoyed with him because of the song, honestly. And you know, when you're young and kind of emo, we understand it too. So I'm trying to give him a pass here, but I thought James came across great here. But James, if you notice, was going to go check on one last thing before the guys head out to the roadhouse. And so he goes through to check, I think, on the furnaces and the electricity. But we're hearing that hum of the electricity that we heard. And my question for you is, did you see where they're working security at?
No.
The patch on her shoulder was Great Northern Hotel, and they show the Great Northern Hotel. So James is working at the Great Northern Hotel. And guess where we've heard this electricity before? Well, we've heard it with Ben in his office.
Right in the corner.
Exactly. So maybe this is close to the room that Dale was in. Maybe I'm making stuff up. I don't know, but it feels like, again, it's pulling together. So despite the fact that less is more approach is really good, this, for the most part, final scene I think is tremendous too, because we get Sarah Palmer walking along a brick street at night, which is unusual for her. And she goes into some little corner bar, and there's a middle-aged crowd. There's a little bit of a mix. There's not a lot of people, maybe a dozen or so, and she's getting looks for some people, and she ignores them all, just goes towards the end of the bar and orders what, a Bloody Mary, I think it was. And there's a lone trucker sitting by himself drinking. I'm gonna guess, because I'm not really a huge beer or alcohol guy. Certainly not like I used to enjoy when I was a kid. I'm not really a drinker, but I want to call it a Boilermaker because he's taking a shot after something. I'm probably wrong. I couldn't see the label of the beer, but we don't know this guy. But he's a middle-aged, you know, big dude or whatever. She just goes to smoke because, thank you, Sarah, for smoking. It's one of the last times we get to see it in TV. And you know, the guy's looking at her, and she's older, and even though she's older, she's aged somewhat well, even though she's old. I've seen a lot worse, but she's old and she's damaged goods. But it's late at night at the corner bar, so what does this guy do? Pulls up in the chair next to her and starts talking to her about wanting to go home. And she's like, just go back to where you're sitting. Not interested. You know, I'm not trying to be rude. And we don't know why she's out. But
you know what his shirt says?
Truck you. I wrote that down too. I was trying to do the serious angle before mentioning it because I popped when I saw that walking over, because this guy's kind of intense. You know, he wants a piece late at night. So, of course, what does a guy do that gets rebuffed by a woman? He's basically accusing her of being a lesbian, saying you like to eat pussy, you're a cunt, you're just, I mean, dude's a real asshole. And she's like, no, I'll eat you. And he's like, no, I'll fucking pull off your little lesbian titties off. And he's like, just being like really rough. And the guy's a bastard. She turns around, she looks disgusted. And then this is where it gets bad shit. She literally pulls her face off, and then it looks like shit comes out of her eyes. Like, it sounds like darts to me, and you see like a hand inside there or something. I don't know. And then it's like face explodes and falls down. She puts her face back on. We see the truck you think in blood. She yells like, oh my God, you know, I was having my drink. He came over, because the bar guy's almost like blaming her for it. And she's acting like, no, he came over. You saw me drinking by myself. Pretty intense scene. I liked it. What were your thoughts?
It also, it contrasts with the Laura Palmer we saw inside the Red Room, who took off her face and had blinding white light that just shot out of it. But Sarah Palmer, I think the figure is actually well known to us. I think it's the figure that killed the young couple at the beginning of this new season. Because there were these thin flashes of white, which
Yeah.
seemed to be some sort of figure. So it seemed like that figure was just reaching out and scratching off the neck.
Do you
The
think
thing
that
is,
the thing with Hawk going up to her house, all the sound that we heard and everything in the other room, that maybe she's killing people? Maybe she's a tulpa? I don't know
maybe
how she
I
got
think
the
at
way
this
she
point,
was, but I don't think it's really Sarah now.
no, there's no way that's actually Sarah Palmer.
Okay.
But we go to the roadhouse after, one bar to another. There are two women sitting there. I don't recognize them. If they were in it, they were in it, but I don't recognize them. And one tells another not to go to that nut house. And the one with long hair, because one's with short hair and one has long hair, is wearing Paula's sweater. But then there's a mention of Billy. Apparently, the woman with long hair, I don't know her name, was one of the last people to see Billy. And she explains it was a scary day, that he suddenly just jumped a 6-foot fence, beat his way inside, was spitting up blood into the sink as it was pouring out of his nose and mouth, and then he just bolted. And it seems that this girl's mom and Billy are having a thing. And what's the girl's mom's name? Tina. It's not Audrey. I didn't think Audrey had a daughter, so it was whatever. But at that moment, there's this odd silence afterwards. And it seems that Billy has quite a few ladies going around. And then the announcer... Oh, yeah. Then the announcer announces Lissy, I think. And music starts with flashes.
Yeah.
Yeah, who cares? With the flashes to the women who glance at each other, and then the credits roll. That's the end.
Yeah, no disrespect to the people playing at the end.
Don't
I
care.
like that. I just like the lore ending too. I agree with you on that too. It's just sort of there, and this feels like a throwaway or something to add on with Audrey. But to me, it'd have been more effective if, like, they're talking about, Audrey's lover Billy, and we don't know who the Billy is. But to me, it might have been one of those things where somebody walked in and a woman reacted, "Oh, Billy," and we don't quite see his face, something like that. Even if that's a bit soap opera-ish, sometimes that's not a bad thing, because just having two people talk about it, you kind of tune out when you have a really intense scene. Like I want to see it, especially with such a visually impactful episode, rather than listen to it sometimes. And if it's people I know and I don't have to think about them and they're rehashing something and adding to it, and I know I can listen and follow, that's great. But if you weren't paying attention real hardcore about Audrey and her cheating on her husband with this guy Billy, whoever it turns out to be, if we find out, it's like, I don't need these two people that are like third party friends of somebody or whatever, because my immediate brain's going, who are they? Okay, I don't know how much we saw them before. Oh, it's not the hot one that just you got her all wet, but that's the married one that we just heard about. And it's a confusing mess to me. This is just an edit I would just chop off or reshoot or do something. That's just me. It didn't work for me. But if that's the weakest scene of the entire episode, which to me it is, I'll take it, because finishing up here, I think it was a tremendous episode. Some great visuals, some of the intense stuff from early on. We get reminded of the lady from, I don't know if it was I call it the Red Sea, where Dale was at. She's physically back. We don't get a lot of talking and goofing with the Twin Peaks stuff. We get our little Lucy moment for a light laugh, and the FBI guy. This episode just felt a lot better. One of the key elements that I think I'm going to maybe try to look through the rest of the lenses, I finally feel like I got what they're trying to do in this third episode. That's what I said earlier. They're not trying to give you nostalgia. They're not trying to give you the Cobra Kai vibes. They're deliberately trying to create their own unique story that you can capture it. Because if you watch this from start to finish, it works, but because you don't have the emotional attachment to some of the characters or understand the past history, a lot of depth is missing. So it could be watched on its own. But when I started watching this in Showtime, when it came out a couple years ago, I got about 2 episodes in. I went, I remember half this stuff, but I had to go back and try to rewatch it. And eventually I did with you. And so this being a first watch, It makes so much more sense now. But what a fantastic episode. It really renewed my faith after the past couple. Once in a while, we get like a little throwaway scene like this that doesn't seem like it's going to matter. So I go, why should I care about it as a viewer? But I'll take it. It's just a minute or two with these two young women. And overall, the episode's great. It's fantastic. The only thing I'm missing is a more haunting score that we got in season 1. But I guess we're not ever going to get that. So there you go. Those are my final thoughts. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. This episode was something special, especially after all we've been through, and things are tying together now. Random Douglas Jones and Janie are tied into Diane, even though we never met Diane. Diane is tied to Cole and everything, and it all will tie back to Twin Peaks. I just feel it. I feel it coming in my bones, and there's only 4 more episodes left, I believe, and then we are done, finished. And I think if we keep getting episodes like this, we're in for a good ending. It may not be the ending we want exactly, but it will be a good one.
We'll see. I know you're really surprised at the end of season 2 how it ended up, but I like how Lynch came in for the last episode or two and kind of said, "All right, let me tie this shit show together in a way." And then he did the movie to kind of put what he wanted in. And I do think season 3 is a lot like Fire Walk with Me. So yeah, if you're watching, definitely watching Fire Walk with Me helps a lot. That's where I think the Ring is introduced and some other characters, and just makes sense because we're getting the top down view of what really happened back in the 70s, early on in this episode with them talking about the Blue Rose and everything too. But yeah, it's starting to work. If the rest of the episodes are as strong as this one and we have a great climax, that's all I can hope for too. It'll be worth it. I don't feel like we've had a lot of dopey stuff. We've had some kind of fun stuff. Maybe we'll see Champ Kind again. I don't know, but yeah, I'm ready for the next one. It's awesome. All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Twin Peaks Season 3, Episode 14 here on Xtreme TV. I'm Rob, your host for the Xtreme Movie Show, alongside Professor Pixel. Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening. As always, stay extreme. Have a good night. Remember, have some cup of coffee, too, and some damn fine pie. We're going to get more coffee, I bet. All right, good night.